If I was Nikola Tesla, I would have punched Thomas Edison in his mouth. Okay? And I wouldn't have even tried to hold the dragon back. I would have punched him in his mouth. I would have waited till the cops got there. I would have turned myself in. I would have did my time and moved on. And you know why? I don't condone violence. I think violence is a bad idea. But Thomas Edison deserved it. He deserved it. I went into this thinking that he was going to just be a famous Aquarius, a stuffy, boring inventor who made some pretty cool stuff that I enjoy to this day. But I was not expecting all this tea. When my teachers told me about Edison as a young girl, they did not spill none of this tea. So today, I'm going to tell you guys about the infamous Aquarius, Thomas Edison. Okay? But first, I'm going to shout out my new patron. Nathaniel Stewart became a patron, and I am eternally grateful. Hello, Nathaniel, and thank you for becoming a patron. I hope you enjoy my series, Magical Minutes, that I always do every week or every other week on my Patreon page. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, underneath here is a link to my Patreon page. So please, it's free to go check it out. Okay? All right, so let's do the introduction, and then I'm going to tell you about Thomas. Tom is a trip, okay? Oh, for those of you who don't know, hi. I'm Queen Osset Haru, and thank you for joining us for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to anybody and everybody who else might find it to be interesting too. And please leave us a positive comment in the comment section. And if you have time, stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to read two of my favorite comments from previous videos, and I'm going to respond to them. If you would like to get a reading done, please email me. My email is underneath this video. If you would like to hit me up on social media, my social media is underneath this video. If you would like to check out my Patreon, if you would like to send me a PayPal donation, if you would like to send me a gift from my Amazon wish list, if you would like to get some Ask an Aquarius merchandise, all of that is underneath this video, okay? All right, guys, so let's talk about Edison. Now, mind you, I'm going to try to make this video as short as possible, but it's not going to be easy because so much stuff happens. So I'm going to do my best. Let me jump right into it. I try to keep my videos short, but Edison was a trip. His name is Thomas Alva Edison. Thomas is definitely an Aquarius. He was born February the 11th of 1847. He died in the season of Libra, October the 18th, 1931. So really not even that long ago, really. I was born in 77. He had just died 40 years before I was born. So anyway, basically, for those of you who aren't familiar, most of you probably know Edison, but you might not be familiar about why he's so famous. Edison was one of the most, oh my God, he was a genius, like a lot of Aquarius are. I mean, he really had that honest. It says here he was an American inventor and businessman who was described as America's greatest inventor. So more than Benjamin Franklin, more than all these other people whose names you can probably think of, he was the greatest one. Aquarius have a tendency to be grand. You know, a lot of us get those kinds of titles of greatest or best. And not that we really even try to. Edison did. But some of us, it's just because of creative and innovative ideas. Edison had some of that, but he had some other things going on too. Anyway, let's finish with his accolades. Edison developed many fields that you enjoy right at this moment. Fields such as electric power generation. We would not have a lot of this stuff if it wasn't for his development. Mass communication. You guys know that, what was his name? Graham is the one who invented the telephone, but it was Edison who perfected mass communication. Sound recording. So the phonograph, which later became the record, which later became the CD. All of this is because of Edison. And motion pictures. So you would not be watching me right now or watching any movies on Netflix right now if it wasn't for Edison. So Edison was definitely very important. They're right about that. These inventions, also the earliest version of the electric light bulb. That was a very important one too. So all of these things are all attributed to him. He was one of the first to apply the principles of organized science and teamwork. So these scientific methods and working together, he was the first to really come up with that and really use it and apply it. It says here that he also believed in working with many researchers and had lots of employees, and he established the first industrial research laboratory. So as you can hear, these are amazing achievements that, anybody would be proud of. So why did I say he was a scoundrel who deserved to get punched in his mouth? Why would I say something like that? I'm going to tell you why. Because with that part that I just told you about, that's what they tell you in school. That's what they tell you on Google when you look him up. But when you dig a little bit deeper like I did, and you watch 3 or 4 documentaries about him, you start to hear that something about his achievements ain't quite right. And what is that? Well, let's talk about the tea. Here's the tea. So there's good tea and there's bad tea here. Good tea would be some things that are just shocking or interesting facts. And then there's some treachery. So I'm going to tell you both of them. First of all, Edison grew up in this family where he was homeschooled. And he was also self-taught, which is amazing for an Aquarius because it allows you just to use your imagination and not to be held back by things you don't even want to learn about. So he was homeschooled by his mother. They said his mother had education, and he self-taught himself, like chemistry, machinery, stuff like that. He didn't go to school or take classes for any of this stuff that he was able to do, which is amazing. That part is amazing. So even though he was homeschooled, he was intelligent, he had some issues. Like many Aquarius, he got in a lot of trouble. I got in a lot of trouble. A lot of you guys in the comments section told me you got in a lot of trouble. This is very common for Aquarius. So Thomas would do stuff. One of the biggest things he did that has been recorded is he set his neighbor's house on fire just to see what would happen as it burned. So he got the mind of a true scientist, right? He just wanted to see what would happen. However, you just set somebody's house on fire and you could have killed them or yourself or God knows what. Also, he ended up setting another fire. Seems like he got a little firebug in him while playing with his chemistry set. He had a chemistry set. He was teaching himself chemicals and stuff like that. But he was at work. At the age of 12 years old, he had got his first job. It was very common in the old days. We didn't have those child labor laws. So kids did have a tendency to have jobs. So at 12 years old, he had this job and he was at work playing with his chemistry set, something a 12-year-old would do, and it started a fire. So he was really on some stuff, right? And it was so funny because they asked him about this. Reporters later on in his life asked him about it. And he said that he was very mischievous and devilish. when they asked him about his childhood. And he just blew it all off like, oh, it wasn't a big deal. I was just being mischievous. And I'm like, you set somebody's house on fire. That is not mischievous. That is a criminal. Anyway, so after that happened, he got fired for the chemical fire. And he started to teach himself how to do Morse code, which I don't even know how a person even thinks at 12 years old, hey, I think I'll teach myself Morse code. But he did. Very Aquarius. He had it going on up here. So he taught himself how to do Morse code. And they said that by the time he was 15, he was actually mostly deaf. I didn't even know Edison was deaf. But by the time he was 15, because he had been working around those machines at 12 years old, he's working around these big trains, and that was the job he had. So he was like delivering like newspapers, selling newspapers, but it was at a train station. So constantly this loud noise going on, and he ended up deaf. So since he was already, doing Morse code, he just continued, working on Morse code and perfected it. And they said that he even communicated with people in his life with Morse code. When he got ready to get married, they said that he sent the proposal to his bride-to-be with Morse code. Very, very clever. I thought that was cute. So anyway, all right, so he's 15 years old. He knows how to do Morse code. He gets a job doing Morse code. They were probably like, whoa, who's this intelligent young man that knows how to do Morse code? So here he comes, and he's doing his job, but he couldn't hear very good. So he said that his coworkers, basically, Aquarius are about these coworkers. He drowned them out. He said he couldn't really hear them anyway, so he just started to ignore them. All he really could hear was the clicking, he said, of the Morse code machine. So he never socialized with his coworkers. He barely spoke to them, they said. But he was charismatic when he wanted to be. Very Aquarius. How many Aquarius are like that? I go into certain circles and people talk about I'm quiet. It is so funny because in other circles, they're talking about how I'm the life of the party. Edison was similar in this way. He didn't really talk to nobody. He didn't really socialize with nobody. But when he had to, when it benefited him, as we're going to see later in life, he had amazing charisma. So anyway, while he's working there, he becomes very fascinated with this telegraph machine. He becomes very fascinated with doing this Morse code. So much so, and since he really can't talk to anybody, he became really obsessed with the machines, right? So he spent his time learning the machine in and out. I mean, the self-taughtness really does mess with me. I think it's amazing. So he learned the machine in and out, and by the time he was 22, so he's 15 when he started, by the time he was 22 years old, he had enough money from, making these machines. At that point, he started making these machines. He was perfecting the machines. He was selling the machines. So by 22, he had enough money to move from his little rural town to New York City. And he continued to perfect these machines. He continued to sell them and became extremely wealthy. It says here that he decided that he would sell them instead of working on them because he made more money selling these perfected machines. So one of the things he was really a genius about was taking somebody else's idea and perfecting it. And there's nothing wrong with this. This is actually pretty good. But later in his life, it becomes very problematic, as we're about to see. So Edison is chilling in New York City. He's 22 years old, and he's working pretty hard. He's building quite the fortune. And by the time he was 22, he decided that it was time for him to get married. Now, in this time period and in other time periods, it was very common to marry a much younger woman. So at 24 years old, he married a 16-year-old girl. Now, for me, even though it was legal, y'all already know, I got married when I was young. I got married at 18. So getting married that young to me is a mistake because you haven't fully found yourself and you're already somebody's wife and mother. I think people in general, men and women, should find themselves before they try to be a partner to another person. Anyway, so he sent her a Morse code proposal and she accepted. And basically, this is where things start to go downhill because now he's rich, he's powerful, he has a wife, and all of this seemed to go to his head because this is when he started to be really treacherous. He became very competitive. Now, he already was competitive according to the accounts, but he became even more competitive now. He wanted to build the best machines. He wanted to, he had real ambitious, lofty goals about electricity. And at that time, electricity was just a myth. Everybody had candles lit. When it got late, they had candles lit. So he had this lofty goal of putting electricity everywhere. And people were like, huh? Electricity was a foreign concept, like time travel is now. It was a total foreign concept, but he was very competitive and he was a workaholic, another very Aquarius trait. A lot of us, including myself, are workaholics because when we care about our passion, like this was Edison's passion. And when we care about our passion, man, we're in it, right? So he was really competitive and a workaholic. And this would have been okay, but he started to be very cutthroat with his competitive nature. And his workaholic behavior became a real problem for his relationship. He spent no time with his wife. He spent no time with his kids. He started to steal ideas because what happened was they said that remember I told you guys he opened that laboratory. So he moved from New York City to build this laboratory in New Jersey. He had all these employees and all these scientists working underneath him. And it was a beautiful thing, for all intents and purposes. But the problem is that he was so competitive, he was stealing other people's inventions. So people would come up with inventions who worked for him, and he would patent them under his business. So a lot of stuff that we are attributing to him, he literally stole from poor people who really couldn't do anything about it. And they were his employees, but he should have at least, he made millions of dollars. He had $170 million. He couldn't break them off a little something, And this was the kind of thing that he did. It was awful. So he ended up having over 1,000 patents. And out of those 1,000 patents, many of them are stolen from other inventors. Or he would take their idea like he did with Bell, the one who invented the telephone. Bell invented the telephone, but Edison got the idea from him and perfected it. And if you change a patent, I don't know about now, but back then, if you change a patent enough, you can now claim it as a new invention because it is a modified it's a modified version of the previous invention. So he took the telephone idea, perfected it, and made millions off of it. So he did this over and over again. And one of his most famous employees was Nikola Tesla. If you guys remember, I said he should have punched him in his face because Nikola Tesla came to the United States, got a job with Thomas Edison, and Edison told him, I will give you $50,000. $50,000 at that time was about $1 million now. Okay? So I will give you $50,000 if you will fix the problem I'm having. He was having a major problem. He was trying to get, remember I said electricity? He was having a real problem figuring out how to make it work for the masses. He was having some success, but he was having some problems with it. So he told Tesla, if you figure out the problem with my machines, I'll give you a $50,000 advance. Tesla was a Cancer, by the way. Tesla was ecstatic. He was like, yo, he came to the United States with 4 cents. So $50,000 to him was like the jackpot. It was like winning the lottery. So he went to work and handled his business, did exactly what he said he would do. And do you know what Edison did? Edison got to work. And then when Tesla came to get his money, he told Tesla, oh, that was a joke. You don't understand American humor. That's when I would have punched him in his mouth. That would have been it right there. But Tesla was a Cancer. And although Cancers do have the reputation for being emotional, Tesla was not as emotional as I would have been. And he packed his belongings and left. He quit. And he was like, I'm not going to let you use me for my ideas and my inventions. And he left. And Tesla went off to do his own thing. And later on, you're going to see they were rivals all this time. And later on, we're going to see how the rivalry ended. So Tesla left to go work on a different form of electricity. Now, I don't know much about electricity, but towards the end, I'll explain the difference between Tesla and Edison's forms of electricity. Now, because of the fact that he was so rich, he was so famous, there were no celebrities back then. There was no movie stars. There was no YouTube influencers or Instagram influencers. There was nothing like that. There was no television at that time. I don't even think I don't know what they did. I'm trying to think of what they even did. They probably went to plays and, read books and stuff like that for entertainment. But he was treated like a celebrity. Everybody knew who he was because of all these inventions that people were using and buying, and they were bettering their lives. He was a household name because of it. They said he was getting fan mail. I'm like, what? Can you imagine an inventor getting fan mail? But he was getting fan mail, and he was getting interviewed a lot, a whole lot. They said the media really loved him, and he uses this later to his advantage. He would often use the media to spread fake news. He thought that was cute. He had this thing about spreading fake news. And they said that one of his fake news ideas was that he was going to make a spirit phone. And this is a phone that allows you to call to heaven and talk to your loved ones. Okay? It was fake news. He never even had this idea. But it was actually, they said it was April Fool's Day, and he thought it was funny. Aquarius got jokes, right? He thought it was funny, so that's what he put out there. Another time, he had some more jokes. So here we go with the Aquarius with their jokes, because I always got jokes. And he said he had people believing that he figured out how to make drinks and food out of dirt, literal dirt. And because he could make anything, or so people thought, because he was stealing all these inventions, because he could make anything, people believed it until they found out it was just a joke. Like I said, at his height, he was worth $170 million. He did not have to cheat all those people out of their money, because these people, for all intents and purposes, especially like Tesla, maybe not all of them, but some of the ones I read about, they were just workers. Like, what he did was disgusting. And remember I told you about his wife, right? The young girl. Well, not only did he not spend much time with his family, she was stressed out. Her name was Mary. And they said that Mary was so stressed out from being the wife of this uber famous public figure, from him not spending time with her. She was depressed. She was anxious. When she was pregnant with their third child, the doctor sent word to him that she was really sick and he needed to come back from whatever tour he was doing. Edison ignored it and said, oh, she always is complaining about something. And she really was sick. 2 years later, she was dead. So I was like, wow. So at 29 years old, it says after giving him 3 children, she suffered a stroke. And the doctor said that the stroke at 29 years old was brought on by depression, anxiety, and stress. So this just goes to show you that a person stressing you out and, doing things in your life that are not good can really have some serious consequences. So if you have an Edison in your life, kick him to the curb. So 2 years later, of course, he married again. But this time he married somebody who was more like him. So they got along a lot better. This girl was an inventor's daughter. She was a socialite, and she was very intelligent with a scientific mind. And she encouraged him to make things and do things. She loved it. She loved the attention. She loved it all. She wasn't stressed about it. She loved it all. So she actually made him even more famous. They said that she was smooths wealthy investors because he had all this money, but he also had investors investing in some of his projects. And his second wife was the one who was smoozing them and getting this money for him. Now, him and Nikola Tesla, I told you, were having a rivalry all this time. And according to what I understand, it says that Edison had an idea called direct current. This is going to bring electricity in. But Tesla realized that his idea had some flaws. So he came up with a better idea called alternating current, it says. So basically, in the end, even though Edison was a lot more wealthy and a lot more well-known, Tesla actually won in their little competition because he was the one who came up with the same formula that we use today. So Tesla was the more, he was the more genius of the two. Anyway, after that happened, Edison tried to destroy him. He went on a smear campaign in the media. He basically just tried to prove that alternating current that we use now was not safe. He did all kinds of experiments. He killed a few animals, trying to say, oh, this is what could happen to you. He was really messed up. And he had already lost, and it was no big deal at that point. Tesla won whatever contract it was, him underneath Westinghouse. Westinghouse was the man who backed him. And Tesla, he won. He had the better idea, and he won. So Edison went on, and he died at 84 years old. So the reason how come I would have punched him in his face was because all of this was really messed up. And he definitely, in my opinion, is an infamous Aquarius. I would call him a dark Aquarius because he probably did some good things like charity, none of which came up, by the way, but I'm sure he probably did. But he did so many awful things to people, his employees. It was just sad. All right, now we're going to look at some positive comments. The first one comes from Duana Malcolm. Hey, Duana. Duana said, you got to walk through the cold to get to the warm peak of an Aquarius heart. Exactly. Brianna Author. I think Elsa is totally Aquarius now. The cold queen, the snow queen. Some people do say that we're cold. And I don't think we're all cold, but people like Tesla, man, he give Aquarius a really bad name. So that's all, guys. Let me know in the comment section what you think of the slimy, shady behavior of Thomas Edison. Okay? All right, guys. Come back soon. I got so much more to say. See you later.